everyone! Today I wanted to show you guys how I reroute dolls. This was a requested video and I'm sorry it took a while, but there are a lot of different techniques for rerouting. There are tons of tutorials online from a lot of different people. There are so many methods. I definitely recommend doing a lot of research before you embark on rerouting a doll because what works for me might not work for you. This is my personal method that I've tweaked from other people's tutorials and whatnot. So if you didn't know what a reroute was, it's basically a way to put hair back into dolls. So you can't reroute a doll with a wig, so like an American Girl or like a Liv wig, you can't reroute those. This is for dolls that have little hair plugs, like this Barbie here. So this is going to be my reroute candidate. This is my African American day-to-night Barbie, and her hair probably looks okay on camera, but it's actually got a lot of burn damage. It's very like dry and crispy, and I've done all kinds of things to this over the years. I've had her for about 3 years now, and ordinarily I would use a doll with a lot of burn damage or a really bad haircut as a body donor, but I love 80s Barbies, and the African American ones aren't easy to find, and she's actually my only African American 80s Barbie right now, like the Barbie herself. I love her very much, and obviously she's already part of my collection, so when I was thinking of a doll that I could fully reroute for you guys, I thought of her. So I actually haven't fully rerouted a doll in about 2 years because of the cost of hair. I don't usually personally reroute dolls unless they mean a lot to me. So once I had all of my childhood dolls done and all of like the dolls that I had adopted as an adult and meant something to me, I wasn't really planning on doing any more full reroutes. But like I said, I figured Barbie could use it and she'd be great to show you on. You can also partially reroute dolls. I have a few pictures of that on my Flickr if you're interested in my Dolly Transformations album. So I'm gonna talk all about like hair types and where you can buy the hair at the end of this video in case you're not interested in that. If you would like to see the written out tutorial on my Flickr, I will link that below. So these are the supplies that you're going to need for a reroute. So you're gonna need a big bowl to soak the doll's head in, a small bowl. You're gonna need hair, needles, or some kind of rerouting tool. About rerouting tools, you can purchase these on websites like Restore Doll or dollyhair.com. It's basically a little like needle that's split in half, so you can make your own. My dad made me this one a long time ago. Basically an X-Acto knife bottom with a split needle on top that's like in a little fork. I don't personally like using a rerouting tool. I've only used this a few times and I don't really prefer it. I like the needles better. For needles, you're gonna need like, not a huge one like this one in this pack, but probably one of the smaller ones in this pack. You'd be surprised what will actually fit through the doll's holes. And you're going to need different supplies to remove the hair from the doll. So I like to use little crochet hooks. You can use tweezers, pliers, etc. And you're going to need scissors. Those are very important. So, the first step is kind of the scariest one. It's removing the doll's existing hair. Like I said, Barbie's looks really nice right now, but it actually feels really gross. So you're going to take scissors, and you're going to want really sharp scissors. And you're basically going to cut as close to the scalp as possible. So, this is the scary part. The doll does not like this. So when you're done, your doll should look like this. Really scary and bad, but don't worry, she's going to have hair at the end of this. Okay, so the next step is to remove Barbie's head. So I have a bowl of water that I heated up in the microwave for a few minutes, and I'm going to gently dunk Barbie's head into the water. I have a whole video on how to safely body swap dolls using this method if you want to check that out in my tips and tutorials playlist. So you're just going to wait until her head is really soft. Now depending on the type of doll that you are trying to reroute, like a Bratz doll or a Barbie, that's going to affect how long you need to let them soak. Barbies have very like soft squishy vinyl that heats up very fast, whereas a Bratz doll has much harder, thicker vinyl, which takes longer to heat up. So you just have to be patient. You definitely don't want to go pulling off their head if it's not soft enough, because you could easily break the neck joint, which is not what you want. And there you have it. It was that easy. So now her head and her body are separate. You're not going to need the body for a while, so I would put it somewhere safe. So the next step is going to be removing the stubble left on the doll's head. You do not want to keep this stubble on the doll because it's not going to make your reroot very nice. You need the plugs inside the head to be empty. So you can use pliers and just go in like that. I find that different crochet hooks work the best for me. So you just go in and you kind of stir things up and pull the hair out like so. Then you want to be careful because if you get too aggressive and you yank at the plugs too hard from inside the head, you could actually rip some of the hair plugs, and that's not really ideal. I mean, you can work around it, but this will be harder if your doll has glue in her head because the glue will get in your way. Also, if you're like customizing a doll, I wouldn't recommend painting the face first. I would say do the reroot first, because you can see how much like contact her head is making with my hands, and that's just going to mess up any paint. So, once you've finished removing all of the hair from the scalp, Barbie's head should look like this. And there's actually a lot of hair that gets stuck on the inside of the head. So I'm going to cut my thing of hair open. It's really important to try to be neat with this hair. So now that I have the bag open, you're going to notice that there is this really long strand of hair that's one complete loop. Obviously we don't want it to be this long, and we need to have it separated so we can use it. Now, there are a few different ways of rerooting. There are a bunch of different techniques. If you're interested in those, I recommend looking them up. This is the method that I have always used. I've used it on all of the dolls that I've rerooted. I would say for the majority of the rerooting techniques, you're going to need double the length of the hair that you want the doll to end up with. So basically, if I were to just cut this in half, like so it was separated, Barbie would have really long hair, as you can see. I don't want her hair to be that long. So I'm actually going to cut this first so it's separate, and then I'm going to find the middle and I'm going to cut it again because I want my Barbie's hair to be medium length. I don't want it to be too long. So as you can see, that's what her hair will look like. I have a little bowl of water here because I find it's easiest to work with the hair when it's kind of damp. So I'm just going to take half of my hair and I'm just going to soak it in the water. You don't have to do this, but it makes a world of difference. It makes it so much easier to work with. But you need to figure out how much hair you want per each plug. Now this is the tricky part. If you're just starting out rerooting, you're probably going to think that you need a lot more hair per each plug than you actually do. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to have tons of like hair wadded up inside the head, and the doll's head is going to be loaded with hair, and it's not going to look very natural. So it's going to be pretty thin, and it's also going to depend on how many hair plugs your doll has. This Barbies are spaced kind of far apart, so I don't want her hair plugs to be too thin. Now, the way I do this is I will knot the hair in half. And you want to try to be pretty neat about this so that it's actually halfway, because if you don't, it's going to affect the way it looks. So I've knotted it now in the middle here. So the idea is that I'm going to loop one end of hair through one plug and then put the other end of the hair through the other plug, and this knot in the middle is going to keep the tension there so that the hair doesn't go in and out. So I'm going to get my needle, and it's best to start around like the hairline. Some people like to do the whole perimeter first. I personally will do from like the ear to ear and work my way back just because I find that's easiest for me. So I'm going to take the eye of the needle and I'm going to pick my plug and I'm going to insert it through the plug, and it's going to look something like this. I know it looks really cruel. Barbie's probably in a lot of pain right now, but it'll be worth it. So then what I like to do is I like to make a nice little straight line on the hair so it's easy to stick. So I just trimmed it nice and straight, just a little bit, just to even it out. And I'm going to literally thread this through the needle. And that's why it helps with that it's wet. Then I'm going to pull this up, making a little loop, and then I'm going to pull out the extra end. I don't want to pull too hard because the knot will come out, and we don't want that if you pull with so much force because this is soft plastic. So then I'm going to go to the plug right next to it, and I'm going to repeat the same process. I'm going to plunge it into her head, slide it through, and then I like to, like I said, make it nice and even on the bottom there. And then I'm going to thread this through. And then once again, I'm just going to pull it up, pull my loop out, and there you go. So you can see that that's what it's going to look like. And I'm going to do that all the way around her head. Now, you know, you might run into trouble if like you had ripped holes and stuff. What I like to do is I just take a larger wad of hair and make a bigger knot, so that way when the two holes combined, the knot is big so it holds the hair in place inside the head. Now the way I do it, I don't need to use glue or anything. If you use the rerooting tool, what a lot of people do is they just take like their little half section of hair, they get it in the fork and then they plunge it in the head, and then they have to glue because obviously it's just, you know, free floating inside the head. But with this technique, you can see it's nice and in there. And I have lots of dolls I've done with this method and they don't shed. It works great for me. So I'll show you again. I'm going to get my hair. I'm going to knot it in the middle. Then I'm going to take the needle, push the eye through the next plug, make that end nice and straight. Then I'm going to thread it through. And I'm going to repeat to the other side. And there you have it. So I basically have to repeat this entire process all the way around her head. This is a very, very long process, and it can take a few days, it can take hours. I've gotten pretty fast at this. I like to basically pre-knot this whole section of hair, so that way I don't have to like keep knotting it and stopping. I can just get in the groove of like doing different things. That works best for me, but you can do it one plug at a time. That's all up to you. If you feel like you need to add more holes, you can definitely do that. You can just, you know, use a sharp object to make a hole and widen it. So I just wanted to show you really quick. I've pre-knotted all of that hair from that one little section, so this way I am good to go. I can just sit for as long as I want and do this whole little section of hair. That's usually what I do. I will prep one section and do it and then take a break, because your fingers do get sore from pushing the needle in, and some dolls with harder heads make your hands hurt more because you have to use more force to get the needle through. And then it's really important for the hair that you're not using at the moment to keep it wrapped up nice and tight. I have made this mistake before. The first time I went to reroot, I went to like kind of like cut all of it, and it ended up knotting and I couldn't even use it. It was really awful. So you have to keep in mind that this hair will tangle really fast and shed really fast. So I put the little twisty ties on it, and I'm just going to keep it in a nice plastic bag. And just like if I didn't want to actually get around to doing this today, or I didn't have time to finish all of these little plugs today, I would just put them in a nice plastic bag to keep everything safe and clean. So I'm going to be back when I'm done Barbie. I have completely rooted Barbie, and you can see her hair looks kind of funny right now. It took me about 5 hours to do her entirely, a little bit less, maybe more like 4.5. And obviously this is not what you want for the final product. So what I like to do for the next few stages is to reattach Barbie to her body, because it'll just make things a lot easier. I also wanted to say that it's pretty normal for like the sewing needle to bend as you're rerooting. You can actually use a curved needle, but I just buy the straight kind, and they always end up getting a bend in them. So it's good to have backup. So this next step is optional, but once I've reattached Barbie's head, I like to wash her hair really good, scrub it down really good, and also her face before I move on to parting her hair, because before I thatch that, which I'm going to show after this, I like to wash her. And that's because I feel like it helps blend these plugs in together, because as you can see, it's pretty piecey and it makes her look like she doesn't have a lot of hair when she in fact does. Part of the reason for that is because the hair is brand new, and part of it is because obviously when you spend a long time rerooting a doll, the oils from your hands are going to transfer onto her hair, and you know, she's just been a head all by herself sitting on the table and whatnot. So I just like to do this step. I think it makes a more polished look at the end. It's optional. I've personally never actually seen anyone else do this. So I'm going to take a little dish soap, and I'm really going to work it in. And part of why I'm doing this before I part her is because I want to clean her pretty aggressively to really work out like the oils from my hands and stuff. And I find that if I do that after I've parted, I kind of mess up what I've thatched. And something else I like to do during this step is to actually comb the shampoo or dish soap, whatever I'm using, through her hair to work it through. And it's pretty normal. There might be a few little like loops or something at the top of the head. Then my last step here is to put conditioner on her, and I'm just gonna work that through. So now she's all clean, and I'm not gonna boil wash her or put gel in her hair or anything at this stage because now I'm going to part her, so I'll be back. The next stage is thatching the part. So basically making a neat part line. So if you have a look here at my styling head, you'll see that she has a very nice natural looking part line, and that's what we're going to try to accomplish. So the first thing that you have to do is figure out where the doll's original parting was, and the easiest way to do that is to look where the holes, there are 2 rows of plugs placed closely together. This hair right here was originally Barbie's part line. So you're going to want to separate that off. And you want to be pretty precise about this because you want to get the most factory looking part out there. So then what I like to do, tie the rest of Barbie's hair out of my way. You're going to work in sections of 2 plugs at a time. So it works best if you use the eye of your needle to separate out the hair. You could use another sharp object too. And I'm just going to use another little draw clip to kind of section this out of my way. The idea of thatching is basically crossing the hairs over one another so that when they lay flat against the head, it's covering up the doll's scalp. So you can do it one whole plug over another whole plug. But if you want to get really fancy, and this is what I usually do, it works best if you separate each hair plug in half, and then you overlap the halves over each other. So one at a time. That's gonna give it the most factory looking part. So obviously if you let go, it's just going to spring back up, so I'm just going to kind of clip them together in the back. You can use elastics. Some people like to use like rubber bands around the doll's head. I just find that really hard to do, so. And then I'll show you again. So now you're going to take 2 more plugs and repeat the same process. So I'm going to split them in half again. And then I'm going to crisscross the halves. I usually do this with the doll tucked between my lap, but so you guys can see better what I was doing, I'm doing it on the table, so it makes it a little harder. And then I'm just going to clip it out of the way. And you can see when I push down how nice that's going to look. So I'll be back when I'm done. So I have finished thatching Barbie. This is what she looks like. I'll be honest, I'm not the best at making part lines. I'm not a professional rerooter or anything. I just kind of made up my own thing as I go along. But now that I've gotten her part where I want it, I took out all of the elastics and clips, got her part line as smooth as I could, and put 1 elastic band around her entire head just to hold it in place. So I've heated up my boil wash water and it was bubbling, so now I'm just going to plunge her part line into the water. Now this elastic band is probably going to snap because it's usually what happens to rubber bands in hot water, but I'm kind of pushing her head up against the edge of the bowl to hold the part in place. And I'm just going to let her sit for a few minutes. Now, one of the mistakes that a lot of people make when rerooting with different hair types, like Kanekalon, is they use really hot water on the dolls. And if it's Kanekalon hair or nylon hair, that can actually cause the hair to wrinkle, and you'll think you've ruined your hair when you haven't. It's totally fine. You can actually fix that. It's just the water's too hot. So saran hair needs really hot water to do anything, like to style it, to curl it, but Kanekalon hair and nylon hair don't. Especially Kanekalon hair. That's like the most responsive hair type to heat. I explain a lot about like the hair types and how they react to boil washes in my boil wash tutorial, which you can check out in my tips and tutorial playlist. But if that happens to you and the hair wrinkles, just take it out, brush it straight like with a fine-tooth comb, and then put slightly less hot water over it and just keep combing it through, and all those wrinkles should come out. And I'm just going to comb her now. And this hot water basically sets the style. If you were going to curl the doll's hair or anything like that, I would suggest like putting the rollers in and whatnot before dunking her, because this water is going to make the hair really straight. I'll go more into the benefits of using different hair types for rerooting at the end of this video, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm just gonna like put her in again. This is also gonna help blend all the hair plugs together. So I'm just gonna keep like dunking her in, taking her out, combing her straight. Rinse her in some cold water to seal the style. So I'm just adding some gel, especially concentrating it by the part line and combing it through. And now I'm going to sit her by my wood stove to let her dry, and I'll be back. So, Barbie dried yesterday, and I have to say I am so amazed with her transformation. I always thought she was like a cute doll, but I never really appreciated how magnificently beautiful this particular Day to Night Barbie is. I mean, first of all, her face paint is in amazing condition. And now that she doesn't have that like frizzy, gross hair, it's just like wow. And I love how soft and shiny it is, and because I washed it, it smells really good. And you can see here, I didn't give her a trim or anything afterwards. I just skimmed the bottoms to catch any like random wonky pieces. But the way that I rerooted, it basically created nice natural layers, because it's the same length hair coming from, you know, different points of her head. So that's why there's like layers, and it comes to this nice little V shape in the back. It's very beautiful. Obviously, if you didn't like that, you could trim your doll up. It's so shiny, and her part line came out really good. She's one of the only dolls that's this old that I've rerooted that didn't get split plugs when I was removing her hair. So she's a really nice clean part line. And I have to say, like, I'm not really all that great at thatching, but she is probably my best reroot. I feel like she has a nice balance of hair. It came out really good, and I like her thatching, and I just can't get over how gorgeous this doll really is. Hey everyone, so before I end this video, I just wanted to talk briefly about the different types of hair that you can purchase to reroot and where you can get them. So obviously you can harvest hair from donors. So if you want to take hair from one doll and give it to another doll, that's always an option. Or you can buy things like wigs or hair extensions. The one thing that I don't recommend is using like human hair, because human hair will eventually like get split ends. It's like your own hair, and especially when you're purchasing it from somewhere, you don't know what chemical processes have been done to that hair. And all of that time rerooting, the hours upon hours of rerooting, you don't want the hair that you put in to go bad. Then there are places that you can actually buy doll hair that are like marketed for reroots. There are two websites that I know of, there might be more. There's Restore Doll and Dolly Hair. I've used both a few times. I personally prefer Restore Doll. I've ordered from there a lot more. I just find that the customer service is better. The person who runs Restore Doll always ships it the next day, and it's also packaged really professionally. She puts them in these nice little bags with these really professional looking labels. I've actually had a problem one time when I ordered hair. She forgot to include some of my blonde hair I ordered, and when I emailed her, she got back to me right away and actually sent me the hair that she forgot without charging me anything else, and I even got an extra skin of hair, which was great. I haven't had any problems with dolly hair. I just personally find that it takes longer for the owner to ship the hair, and they don't look as professional. This is some leftover hair I had. It's just stuck in these baggies with little, like, handwritten labels. Of course, it is a little bit confusing to use Restore Doll when you're just starting to reroot, because you don't know how much hair you're going to need, and when you get the two skins that look like this, she labels it as being enough for one Barbie. That can be confusing because you don't know what length she's talking about, whether it's like the super long hair or how I like quartered the hair. It's actually for the super long hair. I only used one bag on my day to night Barbie, so I have this left over. But that can be a little bit confusing, whereas dolly hair, she actually sells it by the length that you want. So you can get it so like the hair is here, or the hair is shoulder length, or the hair is really long. You just pay a different amount depending on the length of the hair you want. So there's different types of hair. There's saran hair, nylon hair, and Kanekalon hair. And this is just my personal experience. Other people might say different things. I think saran hair is the best for beginners because it stays together. You could see when I was like making my little like knotted sections that it was kind of piecing itself out, and it sticks together nicely. It stays together when it's wet, and it doesn't separate. It's easy to thread through the needle, and it just looks really nice and professional when it's done. And the problem with saran hair is that if you're looking to get like curly hair or crimped looking hair or some kind of texture, it's a lot harder to put that into saran hair. It basically is so heavy that you need a lot more heat to get it to style the way you want, and it's not going to look as nice. Then there's Kanekalon. That is the best if you want to like put curls in, or if you want to like braid it and make waves that way. It's the best for the styling end of it. However, it's, in my opinion, like my least favorite hair fiber to work with. It's very like fly away. It feels very gritty. It doesn't feel nice when you're like handling it, and it can just like ball up really fast. And if you're not good at boil washing and you root it all with Kanekalon hair and you put hot water on them, it might wrinkle up, as I mentioned before, and you might panic and think you've ruined the doll. And then there's nylon. Nylon is the one you have to be really careful with because there's different grades of nylon. There's good quality nylon, and then there's really crappy quality nylon. One of my first reroots ever was on my Customo doll. I don't customize dolls anymore, but when I did briefly, I bought nylon hair for her. And that's not actually what she has anymore because it was very hard to work with. It tends to like stick straight up when you reroot it, and it also, the knots don't stay together as well on the lower quality stuff, and it was very stiff and hard and gross looking. And I've talked to other people who've rerooted with lower quality nylon and they've had that problem. It's just not great for beginners. So I ended up having to take all the hair out and reroot her with a better quality nylon, and that worked out much better. But I spent all that time and money on her first reroot only to have to redo it. I don't recommend nylon hair if you're just starting out. However, there's My Little Pony nylon, which is what this is. This is what's in my Odette right now. This is left over from her. This is sold only on dollyhair.com. If you think of like what a My Little Pony has for hair, it's that really soft stuff. This is great. This stuff is much easier to reroot with. And you can put waves in it really easily. You can make it straight really easily. It comes in a lot of pretty colors. If you're gonna buy nylon hair, I'd go for the My Little Pony stuff. I hope that helped you out. Again, this is all based on my personal experience and my personal opinions. I recommend just doing a lot of research, and I will link my written out tutorial down below. And if you want to see some of the pictures of dolls I've rerooted, just check out my Dolly Transformations album on Flickr. And until next time, love your dolls, love yourself, and love your life.